Welcome back to another episode of the MX Endurance Podcast, where we look at everything that's been happening in the world of endurance sports. My name is Tim Ford, and I'm joined by the penultimate legend, the sexy shepherdess, the sexiest voice in triathlon. In fact, James, we had so many people saying the episode doesn't sound quite as sexy last week because you weren't on it. James Bell, welcome back to the show,
I got
mate.
a week off, didn't I? I got a week off, mate. It's a bit of annual leave taken now and again from the setup. Had to apply through HR, didn't I, to make sure my holiday got approved. But no,
Well, I actually rejected it the first time, and then you had to reapply.
it was a last minute thing, really, wasn't it? Because obviously you found yourself out and about, treading your way across Europe, and the internet was not good enough where you were to hold up an international podcasting session. So you had to draft in Belinda Granger, and I think you did a good job, mate, and so did she.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? How like the closer I get to you, the worse the internet gets. Like I would have thought there would have been a thing, but
I have a magnetic
I'll tell you
field
what, mate. Like
that just pushes it away from me.
Fucking hell! Honestly, like the challenges I faced in Poland last week. Beautiful. Actually, I was blown away by how beautiful Poland is. I think I had this misunderstanding in my head of what I was expecting. I think I kind of imagined it to be Eastern Bloc, quite, not great, but it was fantastic. But fuck me, mate, the internet. It's like I think you take for granted just how we say Australia has bad internet. I take it back. Australia's got the best goddamn internet in the world compared to Poland because it was a challenge, mate. Like just inconsistent. Like I think the episode I was recording Belinda. So again, stupidly, because we had to do the video, we recorded it on Zoom even though we're in person. And it just cut out at some point, and I didn't realize because, as you know, when you're recording, you don't like to have the video up because you tend up looking at yourself. So we had the screen closed. And I thought, I'll just check. And I was like, fuck. Check. I was like, okay, we lost like 15 minutes of this thing we were talking about.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? Because right now you're in Australia and I'm in Devon. The internet connection is fine, and we're recording a podcast. When I was in the Alps and you were in Poland, which are right next to each other, it wasn't possible.
I know, but look, there's actually we will get to, but before I do the little spiel, this podcast is the official podcast of MX Endurance Sports, premier endurance sports community, created by 4-time world champion Chris McCormack. Jimbo, what's something you like about MX Endurance?
Well, I was having a look at the WhatsApp MX Endurance message feed, which has got so many people in it. But every now and again, a message comes in and you think, oh, I can be as use here. And one of our members was traveling down to Devon for a holiday, mate. So I gave him a little bit of Devon advice. That's what I like about MX Endurance this week. The fact that Devon was involved and I got to be helpful.
That chat group was going off for it when I can't remember what I was in the middle of, but it was actually like I think I was lecturing. I think I was teaching a class at the Futures Camp, and my phone kept buzzing. I was like, Devon, like, no, I don't have time for this right now. Like trying to turn my attention.
You were in a parkour gym.
Come back later, and it's like
you dropped a message in saying I'm in a parkour gym, and I said you should do a flip.
Oh, was that? Yeah. That's what it was. And I did many flips, mate. You just didn't believe. I sent you videos, and you're like, that's not you. I'm like, prove it. Because
totally.
As far as it. But mate, like a lot has happened. Obviously, last week we didn't get you on. I spoke to a lot about Belinda Granger, the Collins Cup. We spoke a bit about Ali Brownlee and that performance in Kalmar, and then Lucy Charles, her return to ITU long course to get that world championship. But mate, I wanted to talk to you a bit about the Collins Cup because I know this is something that we have spoken a lot about both on and off the podcast, and I literally have not spoken to you about it since it happened. So, mate, give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch all of it, because it was a big mission, and as you know, it's the children's school holidays. So my ability to sit down and watch a really long race is limited at the moment because I'm the busiest man in the world. But I think we got what we expected, didn't we, from a dominant Team Europe victory. I don't think we were expecting any other result there, and in terms of the 1, 2, 3, that was kind of how we predicted as well. I liked the Lionel Sanders Sam Long race. I like that a lot. I think
same.
I think shoulder to shoulder racing throughout the whole thing is that's what makes it fun, with the added drama of what's the other guy called, the guy that Sam Laidlaw, that's it. They the beef that had existed with him and his attempting to be cheeky and
relevant.
Yeah, exactly. And he just got crushed. And I enjoyed watching him get crushed. I enjoyed seeing them go past him. I enjoyed the time deficit at the end. And it was really good to see Sam Long, have a really powerful race, which we know he can do. and because he's been suffering a bit this year, it seems, at the races he's been trying to do,
Yeah.
and I enjoyed that. Even though Lionel took it, it was still cool to see Sam right up there pushing him hard.
That race was literally shoulder to shoulder
Yeah.
from the gun. Like they swam together, they biked together, they ran together, and that's what I think. There needs to be a way, and I understand the whole team, but I just love to see a way they can turn this format into 12 of that, like 12 shoulder to shoulder races. That's what I want to see, because some of them will
find a way of working out the most compatible athletes for each region and putting them against each other. Because then I know that the whole team in the draft thing is fun, but you'd be engineering close racing, and you'd almost be balancing it out. You'd be like, right, those athletes that are the most similar to each other, which region is going to win in that overall competition? I still think it'd be Europe at the moment, mate. I don't see a way of engineering Europe losing. But
do you think you could do it where maybe you don't pick? Maybe it is a case of you don't pick the top athletes. Maybe it is the 12. Like you pick the athletes from each country that are the most aligned. So maybe it isn't a Christian, because Christian's going to beat everybody. But maybe you have a Sebastian Kienle racing a Lionel Sanders racing a Sam Long. Do you think that maybe that's a way of doing it, where it is actually about some sort of matchmaking system where you get the best athletes from it? You still have the country system, but it isn't purely about the best of the best. Maybe it's the most exciting. I don't know. Maybe that's a different way of doing it. I mean,
you'd step down away from how the profile of it, then, wouldn't you? It would become like the B group race, and it wouldn't have the best of the best in it, because that's the whole point of being the best in the best is you beat people, and we can't. You don't want to liquidate sport to the point where you're going.
All those captain's picks.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, look, it's a good racing format. I want to see more shoulder to shoulder racing. I think Daniela did very well. I
got some thoughts about that later in the show, mate. I've got some serious thoughts about that
later. But I mean, from a broadcast perspective, I know that
I want to talk about
that you watched the whole thing rather than me just I've kind of watched the snippets. I haven't sat down and watched the full broadcast yet. I will at some point when I'm next, have a huge amount of time to kill, which hasn't been much recently. What did you think of the broadcast as a thing?
You see, I couldn't because I knew Belinda worked on it. I didn't really get to say a lot of the stuff that I wanted to. I didn't feel appropriate, I guess.
When you said you were doing it with Belinda, whether that would come into play, whether you'd have to be a bit like diplomatic.
Like legitimately, like honestly, I think I did give a lot of the big chunk of what was cut out last week was me talking about the broadcast, and I think I noticed straight away that you could tell they didn't spend as much money this year as they did last year. Like to me, it was a noticeable step down.
Really?
From the in the sense that it was there was much, last year they had like Phil Liggett in commentary, and they had like 10 different like this time they had 2 teams of 2 doing the commentary, and the big fancy camera they had, they didn't have that this year, and it seemed to me like, and again I don't have a peek behind the curtain, but it seemed like, and again, I'm talking in general. I don't actually. What I'm basically saying is, it feels like they've promised this incredible thing, and then this year they've been like, actually, we can't be bothered, because we saw last year them attempting to do things like the captains being able to talk to the athletes during race, and the promise of live data. This year there was just like, no, we're not even going to bother. Leaderboards, forget about it.
I mean, that's interesting, because when we spoke to Sam after that race, he said, "You wait till next year; it's going to be like, Now, do you think they took lessons from last year? The problems that they encountered last year, because there was almost too much feeding into a small hole last year, and only bits of it were getting through. So it was sporadic, and you were finding that there were too many voices. There were people talking over each other. There was what they were trying to do wasn't working. And do you think they've just gone, right, we'll strip it right back to simple, and then we'll build from simple rather than trying to reduce down from complex?
I think the fundamental problem with this format of racing is that there's too much going on at once, and it becomes incredibly difficult to show what's actually happening. I think I tweeted about, like, I'm actually just starting to think that while it is an incredible concept and I love this style of racing, purely as a broadcast, I think it might just be too difficult, because there was so much that I wanted to see that I didn't see. And again, talk about lessons learned. One of the big things I didn't like last year was that they spend so much time on those finish line interviews. When I'm like, I don't fucking care. I want to see the other 10 races happening. This year they had picture in picture, so they had the commentary while the rest of the race was happening. But then again, it's things like, obviously the battle that everybody wanted to see was the Sam Long Lionel Sanders race, which got a lot of the coverage, which was great. But man, I wanted to. Like, I didn't understand how the Christian Hayden thing went because Hayden was in front of the next minute. Christian was in front, but you couldn't really tell, and you never really saw that. And there was all these performances. Like I think I saw Kat Matthews on the bike, and then next thing she was behind, and Sky was maybe equal to her, and then you see her finishing, and she looks like she's died. But I didn't see any of that happening out on the course. Like I didn't really get to see any of the stuff I wanted to see again. And it's the same frustration I had last year. And the problem is I don't have any idea how to fix that. I don't know how you do it because unless you've got literally 12 things on your screen or you cut in super frequently, I just don't know how you, maybe it's a case of the men on one day, the women on another day, or the course is super tight so that the action's on the screen
becomes less of a one-day event and is a series of match races that are spread across a year, culminating in a result. And then you've got the opens that are the races. So you have one men's and women's match race in January, one in February, and then it's spread across the year. And then so there is a regional result across the year for the Collins Cup with some course showcase at the end with the highest ranked athletes having their match race on a big event day at the end of the year. And then you have the opens, which are the day events. And then you've got these little individual match races happening.
I like some. I think there's something to that, mate. And I still think I still reckon I'd love to see the team thing. Yeah, I'd like to see the team thing be a bit more like sub 7, sub 8. Like I think that if we actually had these teams and they worked as a team, like that could be really cool too. But yeah, I still had a lot of like, if I wasn't a sports fan, you would not have caught me watching that race. Like I just found it very hard to follow.
If you weren't a triathlon fan,
I mean,
working in triathlon, having to watch it because you talk about triathlon on a podcast, you probably wouldn't have watched that race.
Even just things like it was like download the app to see the live stats, and I'm like, I don't want another app on my phone. Why can't I just open a screen and have it there? Like just little things like that was a bit. And again, to be honest, the best thing that I was using was the Obsessed Triathletes website that had really good stats. And the Obsessed Triathlete started by, and I'm sorry that I forget his name, but he was the guy who came from video games and worked for the PTO last year. He did the fantasy league and everything. He's since left and he set up his own website. So he had the fantasy league and he had these stats. So that's what I was using because I didn't need to download another app. It was just on his site. And something simple as being able to see how the race was going and who the gaps were and how the gaps were decreasing and increasing. That was all I needed. But it's like, it can clearly be done. Just put it on the screen. I mean, they put bike pace. I've never seen bike pace. It was like 113 per kilometer. I'm like, I fucking don't know what that is.
You need gaps.
K's per hour.
You need gaps as well. You need splits.
Yeah, I mean, like I just said, it did feel like last year, it felt like they've taken a swing and they've hit some things, but they've kind of missed. And it genuinely, and I don't know, I know Sam and that listen, it just felt like it was a step backwards this year. And maybe you're right. Maybe it's let's just get the simple things right, move on. But like even like at one point, mate, I don't know if you saw the part where Sam Long made a bit of a break and Lionel and Sam Laidlaw were running side by side. And there was no branding on it was just metal barricades. And I'm like, it looks like you're in the middle of a fucking car park. Out the back of the shopping center. Like this is meant to be the biggest triathlon in the world. And they can't even get branded and all, just little things like that now that I've like sort of been on the other side working at sub, I know that you can sort of get that stuff right. Like the visuals need to be a bit better. And
the branding at all times.
It genuinely felt like,
I mean, that was what we commented on last year, wasn't it? When they came running out the swim into T1 and how it just looked like an industrial estate car park rather than having branding all over it. And if they haven't tightened that up, that's a shame.
But again, I think that there was some great performances out of it. I really liked, like I said, I think something like Danielle's performance was fucking like she's going to win Kona by 100 miles. Nobody's going to touch her in Kona this year. Yeah, mate. I was left wanting yet again. Like it's a second run of this, and again, I choose to have faith, and I hope that it's still a work in progress. But I kind of, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. If it's not right next year, I think I actually am going to, like, we sort of said that we weren't that excited. We weren't as excited this year about the Collins Cup, and this certainly hasn't done anything to fuel the fire for me next year.
No.
If that makes sense.
I mean, I'm very subconscious in my whether I'm that into something or not. It's not really a conscious decision. I'll just find myself not watching it. And I know I should have made a real effort to sit down and watch the the Cup because of the podcast we do and the work that we do. But I just didn't get that draw. And I found myself, in a busy time of year doing other things and being busy and not having that drive to sit down and watch it. And And that leads me to believe that it hasn't drawn me in as much as it should have done. And I will watch it at some point. But I've seen some of the key moments, the key races. I know the results and the outcomes. So that's kind of all I needed. I didn't want to lose that much time of my life to sitting and watching an event like that.
Well, my advice to the people who are listening who haven't watched the broadcast is don't watch the 6-hour broadcast. Watch the highlights package, because I swear to you, the highlights is going to have the stuff you actually want to see, and the rest of it, you're not really missing much. Like, I genuinely just think watching an hour and a half of people coming in and out of the swim didn't do much for me. The bike, you didn't really see much, and it was just really hard to actually understand the flow of the race. So I would actually say don't watch the 6-hour broadcast. Don't watch it in its entirety. Watch the highlights package. I think you'll get the same experience, just much more condensed, to be honest.
And probably
that's my honest
probably
feedback.
With the clear light of day and a bit of hindsight, the ability to really zero in on those moments that matter rather than missing them.
You'd hope. I haven't watched the broadcast yet. I remember last year I was a bit disappointed that broadcast didn't maybe capture other stuff. It was literally just clips from the actual race. Maybe this year I haven't watched it yet, but I wouldn't in good conscience say to people who are on the I wouldn't say watch the whole thing. I'd say pick the broadcast, the highlights, because it's a long day, mate. And again, if I wasn't taking a flight that morning and I had to stay up anyway, I probably wouldn't have stayed. I would have given up, because it was it wasn't as captivating as I would have liked. But again, they're doing a lot more than lots of other people are, and I think that there's these hints of brilliance in there. So I hope to just see it come through. We got the Dallas race coming up. I'm hoping that they've learned some lessons. I'm hoping that that's a bit of a step up, and I just hope that we see these things move in the right direction. Because if they keep sort of sliding backwards,
do you think it's doable? I mean, are we starting to see how difficult it is to create this in a triathlon landscape? And just
PT, look at Sub, mate. Sub nailed it.
Sub nailed it. Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. If Sub had been shit too, and I'm not just saying, I watched that whole thing twice, because I had to do it on race day when I was working. Then I watched it on the trainer over many days, and I found it captivating. And that's why I like what you were saying about the match thing. Like, I said it, I think after Edmonton too, where you could have taken every other athlete out of that race except for Christian and Gustav, and it still would have been an amazing race. I think there's merit to that. But if Sub had been a shitty broadcast as well and boring, some might think it was. I didn't. I'd really be like, yeah, maybe you're right. But we saw that it could be entertaining, and I just think it's
man. Take each individual match race and spread it out across the year, and make a big song and dance about each one. But put them in interesting and different locations across the world, so it's not the same place. And you've got like, oh, what's happening this month? Oh, it's the month. This is the month where Christian and Hayden and someone else are racing, and Daniela's racing Lucy and whatever, and make it.
God, the fuck that.
Daniela wouldn't be racing Lucy. They're both on Team Europe, but you know what I mean.
Again, yeah. Anyway, mate, look, we got plenty to talk about other than the Collins Cup. So let's move on, mate, because we have lots of news to talk about this week, including the first piece of news, which I got from Triathlete Magazine, Chris Foster, and that is the news that Mike Riley, the voice of triathlon, is retiring. This week, after 33 years of calling races, well-loved race announcer, author, and speaker Mike Riley announced his upcoming retirement on Instagram. Over the course of his career, the voice of Ironman has been behind the microphone at over 1,000 endurance events, bringing tens of thousands of athletes home across the finish line. In his message to fans, Riley cited family and the ability to spend time with the ones he loves as the biggest reason he'll be hanging up the mic at the end of this year. I almost lost it when talking about my brothers and sisters, he said in the announcement. He told Triathlete Magazine via telephone from his home near San Diego, California, just after his emotional online statement. They're older than me, and I don't know how much time I'll have left to spend with them. Riley said he's kept going, particularly in light of the pandemic, even as he said it was physically getting a little tougher and the voice was taking a little longer to recover. Riley's last North American race will be Ironman Arizona on November 20th, and his final event will be Ironman New Zealand on December 10th. It'll be his 214th Ironman that he's announced. As for his last Ironman Hawaii experience in October, Riley said his biggest worry was when a friend joked that there'll be 20 triathletes waiting at the finish line at midnight of his last day racing, all hoping to be the last one to get that historic final call. But don't worry, diehard voice of Ironman fans, Riley said he isn't going away. He'll continue to release his podcast, do some public speaking, but starting after his last event in New Zealand, it'll be on his terms. I want to control my own time and do the things I want to do, he said. When other families take trips with us, they would always have to check with me first, and I never felt good about that. I'm looking forward to saying I'm free. mate, an absolute champion of our sport. 33 years of doing this. Well done.
Yeah, totally. I mean, he's certainly put in enough to earn that retirement decision, isn't he? And good on him. And certainly one of the most well-known sport voices in the sport, and someone that's put a huge amount into triathlon over the years, specifically Ironman, bringing it to many, many people. And a lot of people will have happy memories of being called across the line by him. I don't really understand the race to be the final one called, but we'll see what happens. I didn't know he did a podcast, but give it a listen.
I didn't know either. I love the thought that somebody's like literally crossing the line just at that 16:59, 17 cross, and they're fucked. And people are like, oh, like you realize you're the last person to be called across the line by Mike Rowland. They're like, oh yeah, that's why I did this. Yeah, I wanted to be the last person to be called across. It's not because I'm had a bad rate. No, I intentionally wanted to be the last person.
Scooping them off the floor. But no, he's certainly put in a huge amount, hasn't he? So all the best in the retirement. And like you said, looking forward to being free. It's a lot of travel involved in these things. And it sounds like a very glamorous lifestyle, but constantly being on planes and going from place to place to place, it takes it out of you.
Oh, I can vouch for that because I am broken after my trip to Poland. I think what did I work out? I've flown to Europe and back. I think I've done the Sydney to Dubai flight, or vice versa, like 6 times this year already, on top of everything else. So I get that part. But we talk when I was in St George with you in May. I don't know how many times I was out on the bike or out running and I saw him like out running or out riding. And I was like, fucking, that's Mike Riley. Shit, like I'm not close to St George. I'm like 50k away and he's out on the bike and stuff. Like he's still incredibly active for a guy who's retiring. So clearly just loves the sport and he's done a lot of positive.
So. Plenty to do still.
But it makes me feel a bit bad though that the last line is I'm free. It's like Dobby the house elf. Mike Riley is free. Poor guy, he's free Ironman. But again, incredible career, and I think he's truly iconic. So interested to see who they get to be the next voice of Ironman. I'm going to put in a vote for James Bale as the sexiest voice of triathlon.
I mean, I could certainly do that role. Plenty of enthusiasm.
How do you think you'd do? What would you? Because he was like, "You are an Iron Man." You'd be like, "You are an Iron Man."
Yeah, I mean, I'd bring it in.
It
would be more of a smouldering kind of drawn out kind of affair. But
almost like what is it? ASMR.
It would be unique. Iron Man, just need to give me a ring. Really, give me a ring. I'll sort it out. I'll do it.
We'll get our people to talk to your people. Sounds like a plan. James Bale. The next article comes from Rumi Louise von Schoenveld from Try Today, and it is not so much an article, but it is in fact the final list of Kona qualifiers as qualification for this year's Kona race is now complete. I didn't realize Kona is like a month and a bit away. Like it's getting crazy close. But we have a list of 55 men and 55 women who are confirmed to race on the Big Island. I just wanted to go through it. I've gone through and picked out a few of the key names, and I wanted to just have a bit of a chat around it because, again, I think it's looking to be a pretty good race. I mean, I know that even on this list, a few people who are there probably aren't racing and some definitely aren't. But some of the key names I noticed, Josh Amberger from Australia, Daniel Beckegaard from Denmark, Christian Blumenfeld, Norway, Alistair Brownlee, Great Britain, Braden Curry, New Zealand, Magnus Ditlev, Denmark, Jan Frodeno, who we know is not racing, Germany, Ben Hoffman, US, Gustav Eden, Sebastian Kienle, Sam Laidlaw, Patrick Langer, Chris Lefferman, Sam Long, Tim O'Donnell, Lionel Sanders, Joe Skipper, Kyle Smith, Rudy Von Berg, Bradley Weiss, and Cam Worth in the men's. It's looking like a pretty good start list, mate.
It is, mate. I mean, it's the who's who of the current triathlon male landscape, isn't it? I mean, it's a real shame. Jan Frodeno, I see his name on that list and it makes me annoyed that he's not going to be there. But other than that, we're certainly going to see an interesting race take shape. It's be great to see Christian Blumenfeld race in Kona, having done what he did in St. George earlier in the year. Certainly shoulder to shoulder with Gustav Eden, I hope. And, my real hope for the win is a certain Magnus Ditlev. I'd like to see him really, take to Kona in a way that some athletes do and some don't. And I think that he's got that ability and power on the bike to really see what he can do out there.
Do you think that because, again, if you look at the names of the people that I'm really interested to see perform there are Magnus, are Christian, are Gustav, and the only thing they all have in common is that they've never raced Kona before. And if you're to follow history, you'd say that winning on debut, I think it's only been done once before by Luke Van Leerd, I think. I think. God, I hope I've got that right. Otherwise, I'm going to get absolutely roasted. But do you think that maybe this is another year that we're going to see that rule broken, or do you think we have to look at the list of names that has raced Kona before to look for a winner?
I think we might see that rule broken this year, mate. I think the sport has come to a place now where we've got athletes coming in. Yeah, I've been wrong in the past, and I may be wrong again. I know Kona's can be vicious when it's vicious, with the winds and the heat. But I think we might see a name that hasn't raced it before take the win on this one.
I think if you were going to look at the list of names of people who have raced before, and yeah, I'd be looking. I'm very curious to see how Alistair Brownlee goes.
Yeah.
Just because of the form. And again, I spoke a lot about this last week, but if Ali has worked it out, or I'm very curious. There's people I don't necessarily think they're going to win, but there's people whose performances I'm very curious to see. And those three guys I'm very curious to see. Alistair Brownlee, I'm very curious to see. Lionel Sanders, I'm very curious to see. Rudy Von Berg, very curious to see. Cam Worth, very curious to see. Joe Skipper, very curious to see. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, mate. It's going to be interesting. But again, the Joe Skipper thing, because we know that Joe put out a post this week basically saying that he's not even sure if he's going to race because of the cost. And it's funny. We sort of touched on this a few weeks ago, I think, when we were talking about the equal, the fact that we got the women's race on the Thursday, the men's on the Saturday. But this is a real, I'm actually not surprised. And, speaking with Joe, he's had a lot of other pro athletes reach out to him and say the exact same thing, is that basically it's actually becoming a bridge too far almost to get to this race, because, we both know, mate, looking at accommodation is ludicrous at this point.
Ridiculous.
Like, we're talking $20,000 for a house with like 2 bedrooms or an apartment for like a week. And yeah, it's problematic. Like, it's concerning, mate, because you want to get the best of the best there. And I don't know but I see people going, oh, Ironman needs to supplement it. They're not going to they don't give a shit.
No,
they don't care. They're loving that they've got all these race entries.
That is the real shame of it, isn't it? Because, if it is a pro sport, then creating an environment where it's too expensive for the pros to actually go and race realistically, when they're not earning enough money in the professional landscape. If it was a football tournament and it was 20 grand to go and stay there, it wouldn't be a problem. But because it's a triathlon race, 20 grand is a big chunk of change for these athletes that, they earn what they can throughout the year. You'd think that the professional entity putting on the race would do something to subsidize or help those athletes out. But it just will never happen with Ironman. That will never happen. The problem we've got at the moment is the landscape of the world is everything's getting more expensive very, very quickly because of stuff that's happened in the last few years. And, those prices aren't going to go down and nothing's protected. Exactly. I certainly couldn't afford to go to Kona this year.
Well, I'm trying to go, and I think it's at the point where I'm like, I don't think I can afford it. Like, it is actually just insanity. Like, I was like, oh, maybe things will settle down, and I'm looking, and I'm like, I can't justify this. Like, even though it's a work trip, it's like it's too much. It's prohibitive. It's actually prohibitively expensive. And yeah, like, I remember when I went it was expensive enough, and now the fact that we're looking at literally tens of thousands of dollars just for accommodation. Again, I think this is something that a lot of people didn't think about when they changed this, and we're seeing the reality of it. But we don't need to dwell on that, because we've also got the confirmed list of women. Now, there's some interesting names on this one. I don't think we're necessarily going to see them there, but we've got Lucy Charles-Barclay, Sarah Crowley, Annie Haug, Heather Jackson, Radka Carterfelt, Fenella Langridge, Kat Matthews, Jocelyn McCauley, Skye Monch, Lisa Norton, Pamela Oliveira, Laura Phillip, Daniela Ryf, Sarah Svensk, Sarah Chu, and Els Visser from the Netherlands. Now, there's some pretty interesting names on that list, mate. The first one, obviously, Lucy Charles-Barclay, who we saw make her return at ITU Worlds. I'm assuming we're not going to see Lucy in Kona.
Why would you assume that?
It's a good point, isn't it?
Now, this is something that popped into my head earlier when you said that no one's going to beat Daniela Ryf in Kona. And my brain was like, it'd be cool if Lucy Charles-Barclay came back and gave her a good push.
I don't think she would.
Oh, you never know.
I think Danny's red hot at the moment.
Yeah.
I know, you're right. Maybe me saying that Lucy can't do it, she's going to go and do it just because I seem to be
that guy.
Seems to be.
I think out of everybody there, Lucy Charles on form is probably the only one that really could. Looking at the way Daniela's firing at the moment, Daniela Ryf is the name. Having gone from, having that stuttery period where we both thought that it might be the end of her reign, to what she did in St George, to then what she did at the Collins Cup. I can't see anybody
The
beating
Collins Cup,
Daniela
mate,
at the
was
moment. So, I think she's the one to watch. And then there are the people that are going to be competing for the podium.
I mean, I would love to see Lucy there. I think Lucy is, like I've said before, the sport's more exciting when Lucy's racing it. And mate, like to come back and win a world title, like you're setting the bar pretty high, hey. And it wasn't a nothing feel. Like she beat Emma Pallant-Brown, who is probably the in-form middle distance athlete at the moment. Yeah, mate, you're right. If Lucy, I'd love, again, you don't know where this year's like. We've got an article coming up later about Lucy and her plans for the rest of the year, but part of me hopes that she just rolls the dice safely and goes and does something special, because that would be, talk about the comeback story. That'd be amazing. But yeah, the other one I forgot to mention was Sam Long. Now, we knew at the start of this year, Sam Long said that he was going to forego Kona to focus on Roth. I wonder if that might change now, considering what happened at Roth and the fact that he did not feature at all at that race. Maybe he's going to change his plans and come to Kona. I don't know.
Yeah, you never know, do you? I mean, there's a chance. I think he was expecting to go to Roth and have a really, really strong race and dominate, and then go to Alpe d'Huez and have a bit of a European tour. He had a bit of a stuttery start to the year. So if I was him and I had the form, why not go and roll the dice at Kona? He's obviously had a good race at the Collins Cup, and he's swinging back into the Sam Long we know and love. So why not?
Yeah, I agree. Be interesting. Anyway, mate, that's Kona. Let's move on to the next thing, and this is the Super League Triathlon preview. We got this from Tri 24/7 because Super League kicks off this weekend in London. It is the first of a 5-race series this year. I think they're the 4 races in London, Munich, Malibu, and Toulouse, followed by the grand final in, Neom in Saudi Arabia at the end of October. But as I said, the first round kicks off this weekend, Sunday, September 4th, with the triple mix. Now, there's a lot in here, mate, but I don't know. Like, you put this summary here. Do you want to take the lead on this? Because I have no idea.
Yeah, man. So Super League London starts this weekend on Sunday, September the 4th. The women's triple mix starts at 9 minutes past 12 local time, which is 13:09 Central European time, 7:09 Eastern Standard Time, and 4:09 Pacific. The men's triple mix starts at 13:24 local time, which is 14:24 Central European time, 8:24 Eastern Standard Time, and 5:24 Pacific. The broadcast will be available on the BBC Red Button, iPlayer, Discovery Plus, and Eurosport, and will begin at midday local time. So we've got, various big names on the start list for the men, with Alex Yee, Hayden Wild, Vasco Vilasa. Who else have we got? Dan Dixon, Max Stapley,
Tyler
Sergio
Mislachuk.
Baxter. Tyler Mislachuk is there as well, isn't he? How did I forget about Tyler? Mm-hmm. On the women's side, we've got Georgia Taylor-Brown. Jess Limoth's not going to be there. Non-Stanford is going to be racing. Who else is racing? Sophie Coldwell, Cassandra Beaugrand. But Cassandra Beaugrand is going to be missing one of the rounds, I think. Beth Potter's going to be there. And, we're going to be seeing the standard Super League fare. It's like a festival of triathlon on the ground at a Super League race. So if you're there in London and have the opportunity to go and be part of it, do that. The North Dock West India Quay is the business district of Canary Wharf and is the host for the triple mix format, which sees the athletes race 3 times in 3 different racing formats. Stage 1, swim, bike, run. Stage 2, run, bike, swim. Stage 3, bike, swim, run. Now, the third stage is started in a pursuit style based upon the times from the first 2 events. The race distance is a 300-meter swim, which is 1 lap, 4-kilometer bike, 4 laps, and a 1.6-kilometer run, which is 2 laps. And the rest times between the stages is just 2 minutes. And so we will see athletes racing hard, fast, with little time to recovery. And it's going to be exciting, mate. I will be watching Super League. Will you? How's that?
You know what?
How's that time of day suit you?
I'm just not that excited about it this year, mate, to be honest. Like, I feel like I probably shouldn't say this considering I work for the company that puts this race on, but I really feel like Super League's lost its way in the last couple of years. Like, I think that they peaked in 2019 where they had that Super League grand final in Singapore that we were both at. And since then, I just feel like it's getting a bit jumbled. Like last year with the introduction of the teams, it didn't really work, but kind of did. And then this year the teams are back, but I don't really understand, is this team racing now, or is it individual racing? And I look at the list and I'm still just like, I don't know who half the people are. And I'm not as pumped up about Super League as I normally am, because Super League to me is like one of the best formats of racing that there is. And it just, I don't know what to say, mate. Like, I'm really not that, like, until we, so I'd forgotten that it was this weekend. And like, I literally represent athletes who are racing in this race. And it's just such a, yeah, I don't know. There's something just not that exciting about it for me at the moment. Like, I just feel a bit, I guess I'm just a bit disappointed that it has gone from being something so awesome, and it just feels like it's getting washed out a little bit every single year, and a bit more complicated and a little bit more confused, and to the point that I don't really know what is it anymore. Like, where are we at with it? Because the arena games I did not like, and I did like it the first. I thought the arena games were great when they came in this year. I despised it. Was not interested. So I was like, okay, the championship will be great. The championship will be great. And here we are. And I'm just like,
I hear you. I mean, I wish they were still racing over 2 days, because that really really captured me when Super League came along. The 2 days of racing with the different types of races that they were going to use. They seem to really have just focused on the triple mix, and it's become Super League is now a triple mix over 3 stages in one race. And it's gone from being a weekend of triathlon racing, which you didn't know what you were going to get, to being a few hours on a Saturday afternoon of the triple mix, and only the triple mix. And it's a bit of a shame that. I mean, I still think it provides very exciting racing. I still think it's worth watching. I still think it's a very bite-sized and digestible, exciting triathlon experience. But like you say, I think it's not quite lived up to what it could have been. But there is still time, mate.
I mean, if it's a team, the most exciting event at the Olympics and Com Games was a mixed team relay. We now have a team concept in Super League. Why isn't there a mixed team relay? Why isn't there some relay element? Like, is it a team event or is it not? Because I can't work it out for the life of me. And then, I mean, looking through the short shoot stuff, it's like, oh, you earn the short shoot, but it has to be used on the first lap of the run. So there's not even the excitement of when's an athlete going to take the short shoot. Like, I still remember that race in Mallorca, where it was Johnny Brownlee and Vincent Louis, and you knew that Johnny had it up his sleeve. Was it Johnny and Ali?
Yeah,
Vince?
It was Johnny and Vince.
And we saw that, was it Johnny took it and committed, and Vince ultimately called him. And then we saw it last year in Munich, where Johnny and Vince had it, and it was used at the end, so it was kind of a bit anticlimactic. But even the short shoot feels like it's getting neutralized a little bit. Like, it's like all the parts of it that I love are just sort of getting dumbed down a little bit, and I'm a bit frustrated by it, because it feels like as a fan you want to be you buy into this thing, you want to enjoy it, and it just feels like it's constantly getting more and more and more vanilla. And I think that what World Triathlon does is fantastic, but fuck me, I don't need another version of World Triathlon.
No.
Like, I don't want to see Super League just become the little brother. I always thought of Super League as like the disruptive, Uber, the disruptive. Almost. And it just feels like they're just falling into line now, and it's making me lose all interest in it. Like, I'm genuinely not that excited about Super League this year.
I hear,
sorry, Chris, because I know you're my boss.
I hear what you mean about the team element. It doesn't... I don't think it brings anything to the party.
What's the point to it? And what's with the fucking animals? I hate the animals too. I don't give a fuck about the scorpions or the rhinos or the fucking...
Stop calling them different animals.
What are they called? The aardvarks and the giraffes. Like, I don't even know what they are. I don't give a shit. I do not fucking care about the animals.
And I must say, the kits, they look quite cool, but I did prefer it when it was the old school Super League kit. I thought the old school Super League kit was...
the leaders and everything.
Was really pimp, but... like you say, we'll see what happens, but it will still be worth watching.
Make triathlon great, make Super League great again. I'm going to get one of those MAGA hats, but it'll just be like MSLTGA.
It's been some time now, hasn't it? 2017 was the first one, so this is the 5th year of Super League racing, and like you say, it has been 17, 18, 16? 19, 20, 21. This is the 6th year of Super League racing, and so like you say, we are seeing it watered down as we go along. But
I just think if you travel back in time and told young Tim, full of dreams and hopes and aspirations with stars in his eyes after that 2019 grand final in Singapore, that we'd be sitting here in 2022, years after that, and this is what we'd be getting, I wouldn't believe you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it felt like it was on this certain trajectory, and somewhere along the line, it's tripped over its own feet, and it's just like, the fuck is this anymore? And I'm just a bit like, God, I just...
They had an opportunity to capitalize on some of the best elements of the racing that we saw, and they seem to have moved those elements aside and capitalized on some of the worst elements of the racing we saw. You know, invested in the triple mix.
I just don't get it, mate. It's a team thing, and there's no team race. Like, surely, when they're sitting there going, let's introduce teams, team relay. We know that's the most popular event at the Olympics. Absolute no-brainer. And somehow it's like they've gone, oh, fuck, actually they have. Oh, I don't fucking get it. It baffles me. I don't fucking understand what they're doing. And yeah, fuck, I don't know. It's very frustrating because it really just feels like it's, at least the broadcast is good. That's the only thing I can say because, yeah. I mean, the venue last year was good. We saw a lot of action there in London. And like I said, I'm really excited to see Tyler come back in race. I'm very disappointed. We should shout out Henry Schoeman, who was meant to make his return, broke his elbow this week. Poor Henry must be the unluckiest triathlete in the world. Broke his ankle at the Olympics, has worked so hard to get back for Super League. Super League, he literally did not race the Commonwealth Games to focus on Super League, and a week out to come off his bike and break his elbow. Like, I feel so bad for
How
the
old
guy,
is Henry now, man?
But 31.
Yeah. Is there a road back from this?
Hope so, because fucking man, it's heartbreaking. And again, he's an athlete, you know, he excels. But even Vince, we know Vince is kind of injured. We think he's injured. We're not sure. Alex is only doing, I think, one race. Hayden is is Hayden just going to dominate this whole thing? Is it just going to be I don't know, mate. Cassandra racing George is what I want to see. Beth Potter, yeah, but there's just not as many. There's not as much doing this year as there was in the past.
It seems to be a
there's too many athletes who are injured or not
thing,
there,
doesn't it? We want to see the athletes that are racing should be committed to the whole thing, so we see a full battle for the championship throughout. That's what we want to see as an audience. You don't want to, and you don't want a complexity to it. You don't want to be trying to figure out what the rules are as you go along. It's short, sharp, exciting racing. Make it simple to understand for those trying to consume it.
And have a fucking team element. Have the fucking
you want a team
race.
elephant? I don't think they've got an elephant, mate. I think it's...
Yeah. I know, they don't. Team Rhino. Yeah, if Team Elephant was involved, I'd be more on board with it. Nah, like, I cannot believe that there's not a team race. Like, day 2 team race. Or there'd be so many... Imagine Super League spin on a team race where your results from day 1 impact your start somethings, or... I don't know, but fucking hell.
Yeah.
Just seems like
2 days racing. Some sort of random selection race on the first day, team relay on the second day. Go back to the old kits, make it cool.
Pay us a fee to give them the advice that they already had, and they've somehow fucked it. Get that face off again where James Bell faces off against Javier Gomez and holds him for the first 100 meters to turn boy.
There you go.
Here we go. Mate, next article comes from Tri247. Ed Mazzetti, a name I'm not that familiar with at Tri247. But this is Lucy Charles Barclay set to target 70.3 worlds. Lucy Charles Barclay has her sights set firmly on defending her Ironman 70.3 world title after making a successful return to racing. She showed she had recovered from the hip stress fracture that blighted her early season by winning the World Triathlon Long Distance Championships on Shamaran on her 2022 debut. And now, she feels she is a better, stronger athlete as she targets this year's 70.3 world title in St. George in October. She said, "To be honest, we hadn't really made solid plans past this race because we just didn't know how it would go. I've had a call with Dan Lorang, my coach, this week, where we will start to make plans going forward. My ultimate goal when I got injured was to try and be back for 70.3 worlds and defend that title. That is my big goal. I would love to be back there fit. Although she will err on the side of caution, there is a strong chance that she will compete again before St. George, hopefully in Kona." She said, "Whether we put racing in between, that is probably highly likely, seeing how well my form has come through. But we will probably make those decisions this week." Having returned from what she described as a potentially career-threatening injury so successfully in Samarin, Charles Barclay says she has plenty of improving to do. "I don't feel like it's sunk in yet, but I have worked incredibly hard," she said. When I was first diagnosed with the stress fracture, I was told that if I'm not sensible with this injury, it could be career ending. At the time, that was alarm bells. I felt I have to be sensible with this because I'm still relatively young as a long distance athlete. I don't feel like I'm at the peak of my career. To feel like it could almost be over if I did something silly now, it was quite scary. In that moment, I could never have dreamt of really being back to full fitness. That was obviously my ultimate goal, to recover and get back to that. But it's definitely is scary to know that this injury, if not taken seriously, or if you're unlucky, or things just don't go quite right, it can be a career-ending injury. While Charles Barkley's injury came at a time when she was among the favourites for the Ironman World title in May and so missed her chance to shine, she believes it could yet benefit her in the long run. She said, I've learned so much from this injury that's going to take me forward as a better, stronger athlete, both physically and mentally. I'm excited for the future. It's been a super tough couple of months, but we have to come out the other side and things are better for it. They always say that the comeback is stronger than the setback, so I definitely would agree with that. Now, mate, I touched on this a little bit with Belinda last week, but what a comeback, hey, to come back and win that world title.
Yeah, really pleased. I was super pleased to see her back doing as well as she's done. And a sensible roadmap for her would be to focus on the 70.3 Worlds, do some racing in between now and then. But we all know we want to see a race Kona, don't we, eh? Don't we? Come and race Kona. Don't be sensible. Just have at it. Go and see what happens.
Pace is slower. Shouldn't be as intense.
Yeah, you'll be all right.
Yeah, it's not as intense as that. Yeah, mate. I was talking, I don't know if I was talking with somebody offline. Who was it last week? And I was like, if you look at the timeline of her injury, it sort of doesn't quite line up. I wonder if, because if, you know, it all sort of appeared that she was like just coming back from running like a month out from the world title. And I don't think you could be running the fastest run split of the day if, or one of the fastest run splits of the day if you've just been running for a month. Like, I think that maybe she's been at this a little bit longer, but I do personally think that athletes do come back from an injury like this much stronger with better habits learnt. And that excites me again to see what Lucy, you know, a evolved Lucy Charles is going to do, because you said it at the start of this episode. I think a fully fit Lucy Charles versus a fully fit Daniela Ryf, based on the athletes that they are at, we've seen at their individual peaks. That is now a race I really want to see, because, like I've said 1,000, that Lucy Charles in St. George last year was so impressive, and Danny at the Collins Cup was so impressive.
I think didn't I say to you in a private message recently that triathlon is striking me at the moment as just this long string of disappointments and races we never get to see. We never seem to get those races that we really want to get. And it worries me that, you know, Lucy Charles misses Kona this year, Daniela goes and wins it, then Daniela has an issue next year, Lucy Charles comes back and races. I worry that this is going to be the Frodo Blumenfeld race that we're never going to see, or, you know, or well, pick any.
Although we have had it a number of times.
Pick any other race.
Yeah, but not.
Yeah, I know we've had it, but have we had it where they've both been firing?
I know what you mean.
But pick any other race that's been.
Do you think it's because of all the races? Do you think we spoke a lot about, and we've spoken for a number of years now about this dream year where we had all these world titles and all these big money races. I think personally that this might be the side effect of that we have so many races that these athletes are peaking for, that there has to come at some point, you have to pay the piper. And like, I just wonder if the reason we are getting all these injuries, because it's not just Lucy, it's not just Jan, there's a suite of them, is because there's so many races on. Like, I look at Christian and I'm like, mate, how the fuck do you do this? Because he fucking is like,
well, he's still
we'll
young,
talk
isn't
about
he?
that
I mean,
next.
we're seeing these injuries start to appear in. I mean, Lucy Charles is young, don't get me wrong, but you know, Christian, I don't know. I think some of the athletes that we pay a lot of attention to are starting to reach that sort of 30 plus period where
Lionel, when's he going to break?
We both know that that as you get to that age, things start to ache a little bit more. So you know, I think might be what we're seeing here. But I think Lucy let's go and race Kona. Just fucking roll the dice.
Do it. Just do it. Come on, Lucy, do it. Nah, mate. Lucy Charles is done. She's got no hope. She's definitely not going to race Kona.
There you go. The bookies just heard that.
There you go, Lucy. You've guaranteed it now. The next one, mate, and I want to talk about this because I saw this and I couldn't fucking believe what I saw. And that is the World Triathlon World Cup in Bergen that happened over the weekend. John Levinson from Tri 24/7 put together the summary, because I have watched about 5 minutes of these races because I was busy slaving over a camp of 20 kids in Poland. But in the women's, Lizeth Rueda Santos from Mexico had an 8-second lead exiting the 750-meter swim, but with Olivia Matthias, Jolene Vermelion, and Sarah Village and Selena Kalmt among those chasing, that was unlikely to be too much value over the upcoming bike and run. Yuko Takahashi had a few seconds advantage at the end of the first lap, but it wasn't long before a group of 20 plus were together and into the final circuit, with the crowds building around the transition area. Brits Kate Wolf and Olivia Matthias were among them, as was the world junior champion Tilda Manson from Sweden, wherein bib number 1, Kirsten Casper from the US. Kathia Shaw and Yuko Takahashi were leading the group of a couple of kilometers into the run, but after a slow T2, 18-year-old Tilda Manson was eating up the cobblestones. Into lap 2 of 2 on the run, and only Vermilion and Takahashi were seemingly able to match the Swedish athlete's pace. Manson was running without fear, looking relaxed and pulling clear. Takahashi was soon out of winning contention, but Vermilion, now with Kate Wolf, were just a couple of seconds down. Onto the blue carpet, and Manson and Vermilion were literally shoulder to shoulder. The Belgian was seemingly half a stride in front, but Tilda would not be denied, fought back and took a thrilling victory. Now, have you watched this finish? Because they literally shoulder bump each other like 10 meters before the finish line. Like, it is a proper
That's what you want.
sprint
We
finish.
love
It
those
even
sort
looks
of
like they have
finishes.
words with each other at the finish line.
Really?
Mate, I saw Brad Culp tweeting about Tilda, saying he's the most Gwen Jorgensen looking athlete we've seen since Gwen Jorgensen, and I think he's pretty much hit the nail on the head. Man, she looks good running, and this was an incredible performance.
Cool. I'll have to go back and watch the finish line on this one just to really capture what you're talking about. But we love to see finishes like that. That's what it comes down to, especially over the shorter distance. The longer distance, the narrative is more important. The build, the pressure, the way athletes respond to attacks, and how they tactically approach the race. Over the shorter distance, mate, I want to see shoulder to shoulder racing down that finish line, and it looks like that's what we got.
She's an athlete that I'm definitely going to start watching. Like, junior world champion, young, doing this against some decent names. Like, I'm very keen to see her career path. It's not just the women's that we had a close finish, mate. We also had a pretty good finish in the men's race. Familiar names leading the swim were Dorian Connick, Mark Devey, and Nicola Strader. But the man the locals were here to see, Christian Blumenfeld, was just 20 seconds back and surely right where he needed to be. On his return from injury after that Leeds crash, Johnny Brownlee was in the unusual position of exiting the swim behind Christian. Only 2 seconds back, but 1 lap into the bike, headed by Blumenfeld, Johnny was already 24 seconds back in the chasing group, reflecting almost certainly that limited training since WTCS Leeds. The World Olympic and Ironman World Champion, fuck, that's a goalful, was more than happy to set the pace for the lead pack up Nordner's Hill. No doubt very similar with the cobbled streets of his home city. He had Kasper Stornes and Vettel Bursvik Thorn from a Norwegian trio in a leading group of 13, but Gustav Eden was 42 seconds behind in the chasing group alongside Brownlee. Stornes and Blumenfeld continued to animate the lead group, and the fourth and final lap started, their pack was down to 12 riders. The chasers were now 50 seconds in arrears, meaning that the podium was going to be decided by that leading dozen. Dorian Connick was first onto the run, but Blumenfeld was quickly back alongside him after a slightly tidy T2. Tom Richard was next to try and push the pace, perhaps setting up a France, Connick Richard versus Norway, Blumenfeld Stornes Thorn grand finale. The pace was clearly on, but Blumenfeld was still there and showing no signs that Ironman training was impacting his sprint distance run speed.
Mental.
Into the final stages, and it's fucking mental. Into the final stages, and the Frenchman was still there, and the crowd were going bonkers. As with the women's race earlier, Connick and Blumenfeld were practically side by side on the blue carpet, and it was the European Championship silver medalist from Munich who took the victory by just 1 second in an absolutely fantastic and thrilling event. Now, Jimbo, this is not how I expected this race to go. Gustav Eden's performance is what I expected to see from Christian and and Christian and Gustav. But fucking hell, is there nothing Christian Blumenfeld can't do? It's fucking mental,
man.
mate.
He's focused hard on Kona, isn't he? And it's really blunted his sprint distance racing.
He's superhuman. He's superhuman. It's almost getting boring at this point. I'm like, fucking hell, Christian. What can't you do, mate? Like, as we say, every rule about triathlon is gone. We talked about Ben Knut being the most versatile athlete in the past. This is the most versatile athlete in history, mate. History.
Yeah, I think so. And he's really harking back to the early days of the sport where, people hadn't hadn't specified their distances. They were just racing, back in the 80s, they were just racing sprint races, they were racing Olympic races, and then they were going and racing Ironman. And he harks back to that, but he harks back to it with a quality that wasn't seen back then, you know, in terms of being able to go as fast as he does over the iron distance and still fire as hard as he does at the sprint distance. It's remarkable, spreading himself across the spectrum that is triathlon. And then doing something like Sub, going and winning the world championships in George. He's going to go to Kona, and I'm sure he's going to have a good race. We could be seeing years of domination from this man.
It honestly, like genuinely, I thought that we're going to see not Christian and Gustav. I know they're very competitive, but like they're just not going to be able to compete with the shorter guys just because of what they're doing, and like the fact that they're training for Kona, which is, as we said, 6 weeks away, 5 weeks away. I was like, they're not. When I saw this sprint finish, I was like, you've got to be fucking kidding me! Like, you actually have to be kidding me right now, because it's a proper sprint finish, mate. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it, and I love it. I love that I don't get it.
Yeah,
because it's phenomenal.
Mate, he's a freak of nature. The man is
freak of nature.
The man is head and shoulders above everyone at the moment, and
even Gustav, mate, who's his closest competitor, is not even on the same level as Christian at the moment. Like, we thought, even at the middle distance, Gustav, we saw him obviously beat him in Edmonton, but compare their Collins Cup times. Christian was a minute ahead of him, 2 minutes, like something ridiculous. It's fucking mental, mate.
Plenty more to come as well, as we edge towards the biggest race of the year.
The closest thing I can compare this to recently is when we saw Alistair trying to sort of dabble and go back to Tokyo, and he had that World Cup sprint with Vince Louis in 2020. I can't remember what race that was, but Vince picked him because they were shoulder to shoulder, and you could see, and then Vince got him at the end. That's the closest, because Ali had done Ironmans and was sort of doing. It's the only thing I think compares, because you just don't see this. You don't see people go from Ironman and come back and be competitive at this level. So it's
where was that sprint race with Vince and Brownlee? It was in Spain, wasn't it? In Spain, it was a good race.
Italy? Was it Italy? It was a good race. Maybe. I think we picked it as the finish of the year. I think we had it as our finish of the year in 2020. This last one before we get... there's a few. We've got heaps to go though. This one just quickly. Ironman have recently made changes to race entries. They've got the Flex 90 early entry benefits. So basically, if you enter in the first 90 days, you get a whole bunch of things, including fee-free transfers to any viable Ironman or Ironman 70.3 event within the region in 2023. Free deferral to the same Ironman event in 2024. Partial registration refund for withdrawals where transfer or deferral is not issued. Access to a payment plan option. 6 months free when you sign up for a full GAS annual subscription. Priority access for new product launches on the Ironman.com store. So go ahead and commit with confidence to the race of your dreams, knowing that if you need to readjust your path, you have the flexibility to do so. Now, obviously an ad, but I saw this and I thought, fucking hell, they finally learned. Like, I love that it's like all the stuff people would have loved during the pandemic. Yeah. It's like pandemic's sort of over. Oh, now we'll introduce this. We listen. Ironman listens.
Plans that you can just race to fit. Is this something that you have to pay for? As in, when you register, you can register normally, or you register for the Flexi 19. It costs you a bit more money.
I would assume that it's that because it's Ironman, but I would hope that it's just if you register within the first 90 days, this is the benefit you get. I don't know, mate. I should have done more research into it.
Okay, interesting. Well, I mean, look, anything they do to make it a little bit of an easier thing with moving your races around if you need to, all the better, I say, because committing to do an Ironman is a long-term thing. It's normally a year plus out, and a lot can change in a year, as we saw in the last couple.
Now, just because we're doing pretty well for time, we had in the Ironman's LMC results, but I'm just going to go through the results because I didn't follow the race. I know you didn't follow the race, but in the women's race, we had Emma Pallant-Brown in 4:21, Grace Steck in second, 4:23, third place Georgia Priarone in third place, 4:25. And in the men's race, Frederick Funk 3:50. Second place, Jan Stratman, 3:52. Third place, Lucas Holas in 3:52.47. Now, interesting, originally crossing the line in second in 3:51.08. Gregory Barnaby from Italy was later disqualified for crossing the centre line on the descent during the cycle section. So, again, ZLMC is probably the most beautiful race on the Ironman calendar. It's a race that I would love to do one day. Well done to the winners, but I don't really have much to say from that other than Emma Pallant-Brown's on a racing rampage at
Oh,
the
I
moment.
love it. Love
So let's
Emma
then instead
Pallant-Brown.
James
Hey,
Bale. Let's move on to the next part of the show.
welcome to the down low on the PTO, mate. We'll have a bit of a rankings update, shall we? And then
Well, we will, because I have
and
some
then we'll have
thoughts
a
about this
chat
ranking
around the
update.
rankings on the I'm just going to run through the rankings on the men's side quickly. In the first place, Christian Blumenfeld with 116.28 points. Second place, Gustav Eden, 110.88. Third place, Magnus Ditlev, 109.05. Fourth place, Lionel Sanders, 107.51. Fifth place, Alistair Brownlee, 103.74. And then all the way down to for where I've cropped it, 13th place, Joe Skipper with 95.50. Various athletes in between. On the women's side,
You know, I just quickly, I did jump in and check where Jan Frodeno's current ranking is. Do you want me to tell you what it is off the top of my head?
Do.
245th.
Oh, you know, that's a shame.
It's fucking brutal.
Yeah. On the women's side,
Brutal. Talk about
number
the women's.
1, Anna Haug in 119.81. Second place, Daniela Ryf, 115.32. Third place, Laura Philipp, 112.40. Fourth place, Kat Matthews, 108.97. Fifth place, Lucy Charles Barkley, 108.04. All the way down to where I dropped it, Fidela Langridge in 13th place with 94.54, with various athletes in between. Everything's normal here, innit, Tim? Everything's normal here, mate?
Mate, can't see anything wrong with that except for the fact that what the fuck is going on with the world number one in the women's racing at the moment. I saw this because I obviously checked the men's race because Magnus, I wanted to see a Magnus. I was like, fucking Magnus, congratulations, third place in the world. That was it. And it wasn't until today where I was getting ready to do this. And I thought, oh, check it. I was like, what the fuck is this? Annie Haug has passed Daniela Ryf, even though we've just seen Daniela Ryf fucking dominate the Collins Cup. I was like, what the fuck? And I'm going into the thing and I'm like, it's that goddamn Challenge Roth thing again with the 10 million points for it. But, mate, what the hell is this? We have been very vocal about it. At least we have a system. At least that this is the first. No, it's not this one really is like starting to leave me scratching my head.
Yeah.
Have Danny have the two performances she's had, the St. George race and the Collins Cup race. And this, I don't get it.
The article I saw lays out the logic behind it. All right. And it lays out how how the points are accumulated and how it works and how it makes sense if you look back at how the PTO calculate their points, and it will even itself out in the end. But I don't want that from a ranking system. I don't want to have to look back and go, oh, no, the athlete that's been performing the very best in the world for the last period isn't number one because of the system and how it's calculated. I don't want to have to work through that. I don't want it to even itself out in the end. I want it to reflect quality at this moment in time.
Did you see the update about it? Because I saw it came. I got the press release this week, and it was about how after the Collins Cup it moves to some. I just did not pay attention, but it's like it's too complicated for me at this point. I'm like,
I know.
Something about it, like in tennis, how it halves at a certain point.
I pasted it all in here because I thought, I wanted to be able to reference it if I needed to, but it pickles my brain, mate. It's like, and also I was looking at it and thinking I'd read this out on the podcast, but I think it would just bore the shit out of everybody. And I don't think anybody would get it because I
might fall asleep. I'm jet lagged.
I preempted the fact that if I started reading this, you would go, "Oh, mate, let's just fucking leave that because it ain't good podcasting, and it ain't good podcasting."
But again, like, let's look at this though, like just in context of this, without going, Lucy Charles, who has been injured since the end of last year, so basically did 70.3 worlds. And that's it until now, has jumped up to 5th place.
Yeah, but jumped up 41 places.
41 spots. Alistair Brownlee, Ali, 187 points. But so she is now only 0.93 behind Kat Matthews, who second at St. George, and Lanzarote wins, Swansea wins, dominates sub. Fucking hell, I don't get it. And again, I think if Daniela Ryf, that St. George win was so impressive. That Collins Cup win was incredible. And then you look at she didn't even get many points for the Collins Cup performance. She was minutes ahead of anyone.
Did any of them get points for sub or not? I don't think they did they? No.
No. They didn't.
No, it's
But mate,
the current state of the rankings is a sad indictment on how complex it needs to be simplified. It needs to reflect.
oh my God, I'm looking through the thing. This
Yeah,
is
yeah. Do you,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 paragraphs. Yeah, mate, I think we can just skip that. I think we can skip that.
yeah, there was a tweet. There was a tweet by a guy called Mark Moore who summed it up nicely. I thought he said, "When fans of us,
Oh, friend of the podcast. Mark's a friend. He's always.
yeah,
I know that Mark
he
listens.
does." So he said, "When fans of a
Hey, mate.
sport can't understand the rankings and statistics, they're far less likely to be deeply engaged with the sport. When even the athletes can't fathom the rankings and stats, there's a real problem, especially when those rankings are tied to their prize money." And I think that sums it up nicely, because when you're seeing someone put out the best performances in the world and they drop to second in a rankings, you lose your belief that that ranking system is something you can rely on to give you an accurate reflection of how well people are doing at a moment in time in the sport.
Especially in the context that Danny went from being down the rankings to going back to number 1 after her St. George performance. And we're all like, yeah, that makes sense. To then win Switzerland by 20 minutes or something. Like, she fucking destroys the field at Ironman Switzerland. Then goes to she hasn't fumbled. Anyhow, came third in St. George. She won Roth. She won her race at the Collins Cup, but didn't win. Kat Matthews beat her in Lanzarote.
Yeah, totally.
I'm literally scratching my head, mate, because I just don't get it.
It doesn't make any sense, and it feels like a negative down low on the PTO, because it is a negative down low on the PTO this week. That's why it feels like it, and it's just a shame. I want the ranking systems, the ranking chart, to be a reflection of how good people are doing, how well people are doing in that moment, and it seems like it's not. The men's seems to be working because Blumenfeld's so clearly above everyone else.
But is he that clear? Like, how many points? Hang on, let me see. He's
about 6 points clear.
Yeah, he's well clear. He's well clear.
Yeah.
He's well clear.
Whereas,
I mean, looking at the men's, I actually think that men's top 5 is pretty spot on, to be honest. Like,
yeah, but I mean, Anna Haug is almost 5 points clear of Daniela Ryf, and I don't know how.
Isn't it interesting as well that the drop off from the top 3 to the 4, we got 119, 115, 112, 108.
Yeah.
Like, it's a big drop.
Yeah.
Big drop in points, and then 108, 108, 106, 106, 104. And I mean, Taylor Knibb, we haven't seen Taylor Knibb do anything since the Collins Cup middle distance, or 70.3 Worlds, where she came second. But she's still up there. I don't get it, mate.
It needs to be simplified so people can understand it. You don't want to be reading paragraph after paragraph of clarifications. You just want to know athlete doing well, athlete rank high, athlete doing badly, athlete slipping down.
I love it. My primitive caveman brain understand that. Athlete do well, athlete go high. Simple. Yeah. Fuck. Anyway, yeah, baffling. Yeah, the rankings is a roller coaster, baby. Like, honestly, it's sometimes we're like, fuck, this is the greatest thing ever. This is great. Then you're like, this fucking sucks. Work it out, PTO. Fuck.
Yeah.
The PTO must be gone fucking hell, guys. Make up your goddamn mind.
I think it comes down to a simpler thing than that. We are both very happy and keen that a ranking system exists, because it feeds into our content machine that we need, because we're pundits of the sport. We need information, we need content, we need rankings, we need to be able to put athletes up against each other. We love their website when you can look at all the results and you can, we love all that. But we need that ranking. We need to have belief in that ranking system. We need to believe that it's giving us an accurate representation of stuff that we can lean on right now. Because let's say I wiped your brain of all triathlon knowledge, and then I said, here's the ranking system for who's the best in the world right now in triathlon. You'd be like, oh, Anna Haug's obviously winning everything. And Ryf is.
You check her results. Hang on a second. Yeah, hang on a second. She didn't beat her here. She didn't beat her here. Yeah, mate, it's wild.
Makes no sense.
Makes
no sense.
I mean, yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Because, guys, if you like to hear us ramble about this stuff and you want more, head to mxendurance.com/podcast, where you support the podcast for as little as $3.40 a month. Gets you a whole suite of benefits, including bonus episodes, partner discounts, access to the community, access to the WhatsApp group. You can tell us we're dickheads. You can tell us you love us, whatever it is you want. If you enjoy this podcast and would like to support us doing the podcast, this is how you do it. mxendurance.com/podcast. James Bale, if they want to find out other things about MX Endurance, where do they need to go?
If you want to find out more about MX Endurance, head to mxendurance.com or search MX Endurance on Facebook or at MX Endurance on Twitter or Instagram. If you want to follow me, I'm at bale.james85 on Instagram, or you can follow Tim at tford14 on Instagram. Jump onto iTunes, give the show a review. You can do it in the podcast app. Really helps us out, and it's super easy. If you like what we're doing, tell a friend, help us grow. And if you've got any comments, criticisms, or questions, send an email to podcast@mxendurance.com.
I think if people rewind to the start of this episode, they can hear the actual moment where I just was like, I just can't be fucked trying to be neutral this week. I'm just going to fucking tell that I think this stuff is shit. And I think because we've been pretty down on the broadcast, we've been pretty down on Super League, we've been pretty down
it feels like a negative podcast. You can tell I'm a little bit fatigued. It feels like a negative podcast this week. It feels like we're
probably going to double our listeners.
Yeah.
We're probably going to double our listeners this week because they're going, they finally give some spicy
people
takes.
People love it.
Mate.
But, we'll be back. You'll be less tired next week, and I should be back in my original studio next week because my renovations will be done.
And we now have an assistant who's helping us to source guests for the podcast. So hopefully we'll have a guest next week. We really do. So there you go. It's news for you too. But James Bale, I'll give you more news off air because that's clearly an off air conversation. But guys, until next week, thank you very much. James Bale, a pleasure as always.